This is Windover archaeological site in Titusville, Florida. They actually, during road construction in the Windover development in 1982, construction worker discovered human remains.
In a quiet, unremarkable marsh in central Florida, construction workers uncovered something no one expected to find. Skeletons perfectly preserved for more than 8,000 years. How could human remains survive so intact in an environment that should have destroyed them long ago?
We started walking up and down and looking at the piles of peat. And within just a few minutes, we started seeing clusters of human skeletal material.
What scientists uncovered wasn't just bones. It was a time capsule containing some of the oldest human DNA ever extracted in North America, preserved brains, and even ancient textiles. These discoveries challenge long-held assumptions about prehistoric societies and rewrite the story of the first Americans. The unexpected find. In 1984, what looked like a routine construction project in central Florida suddenly turned into a remarkable archaeological discovery. Steve Vanderjagt, operating heavy machinery to clear land for housing, noticed something unusual in a small, dark, marshy pond. His excavator bucket hit a round, oddly heavy object that did not resemble typical debris from the area. Upon closer inspection, that object revealed itself to be a human skull, its brown surface stained deeply by years submerged in peat. Initial reactions assumed a recent death, perhaps a crime, but a coroner's examination complicated that view. The bone's coloration and condition strongly suggested it had been submerged for centuries, not days or weeks. This revelation shifted the priority away from law enforcement and toward archaeology. Glenn Doran, a young assistant professor specializing in skeletal remains from Florida State University, was called in to investigate what appeared to be something far older and more significant than anyone expected. Despite low expectations on arrival, Doran soon saw clusters of skeletal material eroding from the peat banks around the pond. Within moments, more skulls appeared, revealing teeth worn in a way unlike modern humans. Patterns consistent with using teeth as tools, a behavior common in ancient populations, but rare in contemporary ones. This hinted at a prehistoric group living and dying in this area long before recorded history. Radiocarbon dating soon confirmed the bones ranged between 7,000 and 8,000 years old. This meant they predated the first Egyptian pyramids by 3,000 years and Stonehenge by 2,000. It was a staggering timeline for human presence in North America, one that even seasoned researchers found difficult to grasp. The team described their reaction as akin to walking on clouds, expecting old remains, but encountering preservation and history beyond imagination. The team faced their first challenge when they encountered human remains, which stayed submerged in water. The team considered it impossible to preserve and excavate fragile human remains that had spent thousands of years underwater in a Florida marsh. The team needed to build protective engineering features because the discovery required urgent protection after scientists discovered it. Over the course of 2 years, they developed a pump and well point system that successfully drained water from the bog while revealing all burial site details through its gradual draining operation. The discovery, which first amazed everybody, soon revealed itself as part of a large cemetery because it displayed extensive graves instead of showing a single grave and scattered bones. The burial site revealed 168 human remains, which included both genders and children, who all showed signs of fetal positioning as though they had been intentionally buried with ceremonial rituals. The burials, which took place over about 1,300 years, show that people from this marshing area maintained their cultural tradition of returning there to perform burial ceremonies. This site was no accident. The site functioned as sacred ground, which showed how the ancient community honored their traditions and their ancestors. The accumulated questions created a mounting inquiry that began with their initial question. Who were these people? What type of community had they established? How did their remains continue to exist? Because Florida's humid, hot climate should have turned all bones into dust? The questions that followed these inquiries made it possible to discover things that would prove existing theories about ancient North America wrong. The answers remained hidden beneath the aquatic area because scientists needed to discover the buried ancient remains, which had been preserved through time. The researchers started their exploration of time when they discovered a highly significant archaeological site at their location. The archaeological site, which appeared straightforward to study, would transform the understanding of human existence throughout the entire American continent. The real enigmas existed beyond reach, while upcoming discoveries would produce unexpected results that people would consider remarkable. This extraordinary preservation raised a critical question. Why had these bodies lasted so perfectly after 8 millennia submerged in a Florida marsh? The power of the bog. The exceptional state of preservation puzzled scientists right from the start. Florida's climate is typically harsh on organic materials. Heat, moisture, bacteria, and acidic soils usually combine to destroy human remains completely over a few centuries, let alone thousands of years. Typically, skeletons older than a few thousand years would leave only faint traces, if any. But the Windover site defied this natural rate of decay in a way that seemed almost miraculous. The answer lay in the unique conditions of the peat bog itself. Peat, or peat, is formed from compressed, partially decomposed vegetation that accumulates in wetlands. It creates an oxygen-poor environment hostile to the fungi and bacteria responsible for biological decay. Submerged rapidly after death in this dense, waterlogged medium, the bodies were effectively sealed off from the usual processes of decomposition. This lack of oxygen slowed down the breakdown of tissues far beyond typical preservation timelines. What made Windover especially unique among bog sites around the world was its chemical balance. While most peat bogs tend to be acidic, enough to dissolve bones slowly, Windover's peat was neutral to non-acidic. This rare chemistry allowed not only bones, but also soft tissues like brains, skin, and muscle to survive intact. In other bog discoveries globally, it's common to find soft tissue without skeletal preservation. Here, both were preserved in remarkable detail. To put it simply, if the Windover people had been buried in dry earth instead of this waterlogged, chemically friendly peat, their bodies would have disintegrated completely within just a few years. The bog had achieved an unintentional preservation that no prehistoric culture could have engineered. It became a natural time capsule, locking the past away for thousands of years. The remains would have disintegrated after their first contact with air. The excavation work required complete site reconstruction because the existing site condition rendered all standard methods unworkable. Workers installed approximately 150 well points at the pond's edge. The pumps operated without interruption to achieve a water table decrease of approximately 700 gallons per minute. The archaeologists established a delicate balance that allowed them to conduct their research while protecting artifacts from disappearance through natural processes. The bog floor revealed itself to show the complete dimensions of the burial site. The skeletal remains spread across the marsh in regular patterns, which included burial items at multiple locations. The ancient burial process created an increasing mystery, which developed into deep respect for the unknown people who came before us. The discovery of bodies in fetal positions revealed that people regarded death as a special ritual, which included specific funeral practices. The peat's ability to preserve things uncovered not only bones, but also human thoughts and cultural elements. The content that scientists discovered in the skulls completely reshaped their understanding of what possibilities existed. The researchers discovered that some skulls possessed excessive weight after they reached the excavation site 3 weeks later. The inside contents of the ancient heads created questions that needed to be explained because their actual condition remained unknown. The detail revealed information that exceeded the value of all existing bones and artifacts. The bog preserved all physical evidence, together with possible traces of the thoughts which ancient people had during their lifetime. The upcoming discoveries will demonstrate unexpected preservation results, which will lead to innovative scientific findings. Before decoding those secrets, though, The fascinating survival of brains and soft tissues had to be understood as a function of the bog's extraordinary environment. Preserved brains revealed. The weight anomaly inside some skulls led researchers to explore what might remain where brains once lay. Initially, the extra mass was assumed to be peat intrusion, organic sediment filtering over thousands of years. Yet, when one woman's skull was scanned at the University of Florida using MRI, this assumption was decisively overturned. The mass inside had structure, biological, defined, and unmistakable. Careful extraction revealed a shriveled human brain reduced to roughly 1/4 its original size due to desiccation and sediment pressure. Yet, astonishingly, the folded patterns, or gyri and sulci, were intact. This level of preservation offered an unprecedented opportunity to examine the very organ of thought and cognition from 8,000 years ago under a microscope. It was not just a trace or outline, but an actual brain. Over time, 91 preserved prehistoric brains were recovered from the Windover site, forming a collection unparalleled anywhere in the world. Each carried the imprint of ancient human thought, imagination, and consciousness. Such preservation of brains this old is virtually unheard of, offering rare insights into the biology of the earliest inhabitants of North America. The significance extends beyond sentiment or curiosity. Modern neuroscience understands that human brains have not structurally changed in the last 150,000 years. The Windover brains were biologically indistinguishable from those of scientists studying them. This meant the people buried here were fully modern humans in every neurological sense. Their minds processed experiences, emotions, and concepts just as ours do today. This realization changed the scientific conversation. The bog had preserved not only bodies, but the very evidence of human cognition and culture from deep prehistory. The state of the brain raised a new question. If cellular architecture survived, could the molecules within those cells, specifically DNA, also persist? For geneticist Bill Houseworth, the possibility was both thrilling and daunting. DNA, housed inside cell nuclei, is known to degrade chemically and physically over time. An 8,000-year timeline in a warm, humid environment like Florida's was considered almost impossible for DNA survival. Yet, intact cellular structures hinted at a radical chance to unlock genetic secrets long thought lost. Scientists began attempting DNA extraction, a procedure complicated by the fragmentary and delicate nature of ancient material. The process involved enzymes to break down leftover cellular material and cycles of cooling and agitation to isolate genetic fragments. The odds of success were slim, as heat, moisture, and microbes typically destroy ancient DNA. Still, the efforts were fueled by the unique preservation conditions of the bog, and the potential payoff was enormous. If DNA could be extracted, these individuals' ancient genetic codes might redefine our understanding of human history in the Americas. The next revelations would confirm this hope and transform prehistory forever. From bones to brains to the very blueprint of life itself, this discovery was only beginning to unveil the lives of the people who had been buried in the Florida marsh millennia ago. As astonishing as these brains were, what scientists found inside them would rewrite the story of who these ancient people were. DNA extraction breakthrough. Unlocking ancient DNA from remains thousands of years old is an extraordinary challenge, especially in a warm, humid environment like Florida. DNA molecules degrade rapidly over time, broken down by heat, moisture, and microbial activity. For decades, scientists believed that recovering meaningful genetic material from such conditions was nearly impossible. Yet, the unique preservation of cellular structures in the Windover brains offered a slim but tantalizing hope that some DNA might survive. Geneticist Bill Houseworth and his colleagues embarked on this unprecedented task with cautious optimism. The process began by carefully mixing samples of the ancient brain tissue with specially designed enzymes to break down the remaining cellular membranes and release whatever genetic content could still be intact. These samples then underwent cycles of cooling and agitation, aimed at isolating tiny fragments of DNA from a complex and fragile mixture. It was like trying to find whispers of life within millennia-old ashes. The odds were overwhelmingly against success. Hot and wet environments rapidly destroy DNA, and attempts in similar climates had repeatedly failed. The Sahara Desert, much drier but also hot, resisted ancient DNA recovery for decades. Florida's subtropical conditions appeared even less forgiving. Yet, when the results arrived, they defied expectations. Human DNA was present. This was no contamination or environmental artifact. It was genuine genetic material from individuals who had died 8,000 years earlier. Understanding the risk of contamination, especially from modern human DNA introduced by handlers, became Houseworth's immediate priority. Ancient DNA studies face a well-known vulnerability. Sequences can be overwhelmed by modern human DNA, generating misleading results. To rule this out, the team compared the recovered sequences with genetic profiles from diverse ethnic groups worldwide. This careful check ensured that the Windover DNA was authentic and native to the individuals buried in the bog. The study identified a unique genetic pattern that belongs specifically to Native Americans. The DNA analysis showed clear results because specific markers separated the sample from European, African, and Asian genetic patterns. The researchers successfully eliminated modern contamination because no Native Americans participated in the sample processing. The breakthrough established Windover specimens as the first human genetic material discovered in North America, which scientists could confirm as ancient historical remains. The DNA results provided more than just identity information because they showed permanent ancestral ties. The genetic markers matched those found in indigenous populations across the Americas today. The Windover people existed as direct ancestors who formed the foundation of multiple Native American communities. They belonged to an unbroken genetic lineage that had existed for thousands of years and extended across the entire continent. Researchers discovered physical characteristics of ancient humans through their research on ancient DNA evidence. The genetic data revealed characteristics of modern Native Americans, which included dark hair, dark eyes, and dark skin. The research established that prehistoric peoples maintained continuous ties to their ancestry. The results demonstrated that people from different ethnic groups maintained their cultural identity throughout history. The discovery holds extreme importance because it represents a crucial scientific breakthrough. The research established that ancient people with modern biological features and existing genetic ties had occupied prehistoric America at an earlier time than researchers had previously established. The preserved DNA opened a new window into the lives and identities of these ancient humans. The genetic discovery established Windover Bog as an important Native American heritage site, which now serves as a primary research location for studying Native American ancestry. As the DNA revealed the deep ancestral ties of the Windover people, further discoveries began to open a window onto their lives, habits, and society. Genetic links to Native Americans. The genetic material extracted from the Windover site offered more than a glimpse into individual identity. It connected ancient lives to modern ones. The DNA sequences carried markers unique to Native American populations, establishing a clear biological link that spans millennia. These people were not simply ancient wanderers, but the foundational ancestors of indigenous communities across the Americas today. This discovery helped dispel earlier theories that suggested early populations might have been replaced or isolated. Instead, it showed unbroken genetic continuity, connecting the past directly to the present. The markers confirmed the Windover people were part of a lineage that separated from Asian populations long before and developed distinct identities within the Americas. This lineage had endured maintaining its genetic signature over thousands of years. The genetic data aligned with broader migrations from Siberia into Alaska and then southward, through periods of isolation on the Bering Land Bridge and eventual settlement across the continent. By the time the Windover community began burying its dead, this genetic differentiation was well established. They were part of an ancient Native American population already deeply adapted to North America. The DNA allowed researchers to reconstruct aspects of appearance through genetic indicators of traits like hair and skin color. This evidence supported the image of the Windover people as dark-haired, dark-eyed, and dark-skinned, consistent with the general features found in indigenous populations across the continent. The genetic profile directly refuted outdated stereotypes of lost races or disconnected peoples. One poignant example comes from the facial reconstruction of an elderly woman from Windover. Using her skull and DNA data, scientists created a three-dimensional image that brought her face back to life. The resulting portrait showed the classic bone structure and features of a Native American elder, compressing 8,000 years of history into a single humanizing moment. These findings underscored that the Windover people were not just ancient fossils, but vibrant members of a living tradition. The genetic legacy they carried remains embedded in the DNA of millions across the Americas. This continuity connects past cultures to their descendants, grounding identity in both time and place. The genetic consistency over generations also reflected social structures. Across 1,300 years, the DNA sequences remained nearly identical, pointing to a closely related, interlinked community rather than a diverse or transient population. This suggested a degree of social cohesion and deliberate maintenance of lineage unheard of in many prehistoric contexts. Their burial practices, migration patterns, and genetic ties together create a profound narrative of identity, resilience, and belonging. The bog was not just a place of death, but a spiritual and genealogical anchor for generations of this extended community. Understanding these links reshaped archaeological and anthropological views on Native American origins, demonstrating that the story of the first Americans was neither simple nor linear, but rich and complex, stretching back deeper than ever imagined. With their ancestry and appearance revealed through ancient DNA, the lives and society of the Windover people come closer into focus as the next chapter unfolds. Insights into lifestyle and society. Digging deeper into the Windover site revealed a glimpse of a community far more complex than the simple hunter-gatherer stereotype. The burial arrangements were deliberate and consistent, with bodies positioned carefully, often in fetal postures, suggesting ritual and profound respect for the dead. The presence of varied grave goods, jewelry, tools, and ornaments implied cultural and symbolic meaning beyond mere survival. This was a society that valued ceremony and had a clear concept of an afterlife. Stable isotope analysis provided surprising insights into their daily lives. A chemical fingerprint embedded in their bones showed that these people didn't live just beside the bog where they were buried. Instead, they ranged widely across the Florida peninsula, moving seasonally and drinking water from various sources. This mobility spoke of a nomadic or semi-nomadic lifestyle, one attuned to the shifting natural resources of their environment. Textiles found at the site challenged long-held assumptions about prehistoric technology. Many skeletons were wrapped in woven fabric, the oldest textiles ever discovered in the Americas. This finding was striking because weaving is typically associated with settled agricultural societies, not mobile hunter-gatherers. The fabrics were a twined weave, complex and skillfully made, suggesting a developed craft and an appreciation for material culture. Further distinctions in these textiles hinted at different uses and intentions. Adults were buried with the clothes they had worn during their lifetime, while infants were wrapped in fabrics made specifically for burial purposes. This separation reflected a nuanced relationship with death and mourning, emphasizing both practicality and ritual expression. Grief was woven literally and figuratively into their lives. The teenage evidence shows social complexity through evidence which study his spina bifida condition that causes him limited mobility through his spinal disorder. He could not have participated in hunting or foraging. The community demonstrated nomadic life obstacles through their dedication to him by carrying him through challenging and dangerous areas to their new camp. He reached his teenage years because his community showed compassion and solidarity by assisting their most vulnerable members. The community measurement of bone density and height showed the absence of existence through a state of poverty, because people lived through fundamental life challenges. The men reached a height of 6 feet, while their health indicators showed they maintained good nutrition and overall well-being. The ancient Florida environment provided rivers and game, and a coastline that delivered protein throughout the year to support a large population that lived there, instead of one that needed to fight for its survival. The investigation showed that burial practices, together with burial items, showed deliberate design by the dead people. The objects were intentionally placed in an orderly manner instead of being distributed in a haphazard way. The researchers discovered that the people believed in life after death, which required them to prepare for their upcoming journey. The pond created a dark and ominous atmosphere, which functioned as a boundary that connected the living world with the afterlife, while providing the location with sacred meaning. The evidence showed that the community followed established social structures, which included designated social positions and specific ceremonial practices, while they shared a common belief system. The two groups shared common ancestry, which united them with their cultural heritage that had been established through generations. The Windover site served as more than a burial ground, since it functioned as the core space through which the community expressed its identity. Their activities, together with their social system, create an understanding of how people experience life through two extremes, which include kindness and violence, that shaped this exceptional community. Beneath these layers of care and ceremony, however, there were signs of a harsher human truth waiting to come to light. Evidence of violence and humanity. The Windover burial site offers a window not only into cooperation and care, but also into conflict and personal violence. Among the remains was a man in his late 20s to early 30s, found with a spear point deeply embedded in his pelvis. The placement and angle of the wound suggested he was struck while already on the ground, a detail that ruled out an impersonal or distant encounter. This was an attack that bore the marks of close involvement and intention. A forensic pathologist applying modern homicide analysis noted that the weapon's upward trajectory was inconsistent with a thrown spear. Instead, it pointed to a personal, possibly ritualistic stabbing or repeated stabbing with skill and purpose. Curiously, this injury was not fatal. Another, likely fatal, wound had pierced soft tissue between the ribs but left no skeletal trace. He was clearly wounded once, then struck again in a more deliberate way. Even more unsettling was the absence of his skull and the top 3 vertebrae, bones that connect the head to the spine. Unlike the otherwise intact skeletons around him, these parts were missing, a pattern consistent with decapitation. The fractures showed signs of sharp cutting and forceful separation, evidence of butchering expertise applied to a human victim. The head was taken, likely as a trophy or a symbolic gesture. This violent act suggests that despite their apparent social cohesion and care for the elderly or disabled, the Windover community experienced personal conflicts or grudges with fatal consequences. It was not warfare on a grand scale. Florida's sparse population at the time made that unlikely, but a very personal violence carried out in full. Yet, this violence did not define the community. The care shown for disabled individuals and the intricate burial practices coexist with such acts, reflecting the complexities of human nature unchanged across millennia. The Windover people lived full human lives that encompassed compassion and conflict, care and cruelty. The decapitation stands out because of its rarity and brutality, but it also reflects social meaning. Taking a head as a trophy carried a clear message, marking the individual beyond death and likely serving as a warning or symbol within the group. It was a form of communication deeply tied to identity and power. At the same time, The site records decades of peaceful burial continuity, social cooperation, and respect for tradition. This duality underscores that prehistoric societies were as complex and emotionally varied as modern ones. The Windover Bog holds stories of human empathy and harsh realities side by side. Recognizing these conflicting realities enriches our understanding of ancient humanity. It reminds us that progress and primitivism are not opposites, but parts of a shared human experience extending across time. While violence marked individual lives, the legacy of Windover is one of enduring community, belief, and culture that far outlasted these tragic moments. The story preserved in this bog urges us to consider how these ancient people balanced survival, social bonds, and the trials of human existence. Legacy and new questions. The Windover site stands as a remarkable chapter in the story of human history in North America. Its discoveries challenge long-held beliefs about prehistoric life, revealing a culture that was not only stable, but deeply rooted and highly sophisticated. DNA evidence shows a population connected to a single sacred place for more than 1,300 years, far from transient or isolated. This continuity was intentional. Generation after generation returned to the same pond, preserving burial traditions with care. The bog was more than a cemetery. It was the center of identity, a place where lineage, memory, and belief came together. These repeated rituals reflect values often associated with much later societies, showing a level of cultural depth rarely expected from such an early period. At the same time, Windover raises important questions. The genetic markers confirm this was already a distinct Native American population, separate from their distant Siberian ancestors. But how far back their lineage truly extends, and whether earlier or neighboring communities existed, remains uncertain. As genetic databases grow and technology advances, new answers may begin to emerge. The site changed scientific research expectations. Scientists had deemed DNA recovery from warm, humid climates to be an impossible task because of the rapid DNA degradation that occurs in those conditions. Windover proved otherwise. The preserved brain tissue provided rare genetic material, which created new possibilities for DNA research in areas that scientists had previously considered to be unfit for such studies. The research found that other locations with matching environmental conditions might contain undiscovered human history. The findings from this research will help scientists develop better knowledge about the earliest human presence in both North and South America. Research on the site started when a construction worker discovered something that appeared unusual. Archaeologist Glenn Doran dedicated most of his career to researching the site, which he considers unique because he believes that no similar discovery will be found again for a long time. The scientific basis for the questions now exists at a strong level of evidence. The people of Windover were not primitive. They were fully modern humans with complex social systems, beliefs, and compassion. The people of Windover established a legacy that maintains presence through DNA evidence and cultural traditions that have endured for thousands of years. Windover serves as proof that historical events will always exist in their future state. The process of discovery provides fresh insights that demonstrate our complete historical record to be both extensive and intricate. The Windover Bog revealed an ancient society that defies expectations, preserving not just bones, but the DNA and stories of early Americans. Their lives remind us how much remains to be discovered and understood about our past. If you found this fascinating, please like and subscribe for more stories that reshape our view of history. And don't miss the next video already on your screen.